So here I am, sitting in my home office at 2 a.m., staring at spreadsheets that tell a story I never wanted to read. My name's Jake, and I'm a CPA. Been doing taxes and bookkeeping for 15 years now, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about numbers. Turns out, I didn't know anything about the numbers that really mattered, the ones that would destroy my marriage. Let me back up. My wife Amanda. She's always been the entrepreneurial type, started her own consulting business about 4 years ago. Marketing consulting, helping small businesses with their social media presence, that kind of thing. I was proud of her, you know. She was making good money, had regular clients, seemed to really love what she was doing. I handled all our personal finances, but she insisted on keeping her business books separate. Said she wanted to maintain her independence, prove she could do it on her own. I respected that, even though it made our tax situation more complicated. Everything seemed normal until about 3 months ago. Amanda started working late more often, taking calls in the other room, being secretive about her phone. Classic signs, right? But I'm not the suspicious type. I trusted her completely. We'd been through rough patches before, what married couple hasn't? But I never doubted her loyalty. Maybe I was naive, or maybe I just didn't want to see what was right in front of me. The first real red flag came when she started talking about this new client, Tyler. Tyler this, Tyler that. How innovative he was, how he was revolutionizing his industry, how much she was learning from working with him. At first, I was happy she was so excited about her work. But then the late-night calls started. Emergency strategy sessions, she called them. Phone calls that she'd take outside, in the backyard, speaking in hushed tones. I started paying attention to the little things. The way she'd quickly close her laptop when I walked into the room. How she'd started dressing differently for work, more stylish, more. I don't know, more like she was trying to impress someone. She bought new perfume, started going to the gym more regularly. When I complimented her on looking good, she'd just shrug and say she was trying to be more professional for her clients. Then came the weekend trips. Client retreats, she called them. Overnight stays at business conferences that I'd never heard of. She'd come back energized but distant, like she was living in 2 different worlds and I wasn't part of the one that mattered to her anymore. I'd ask about her trips, try to show interest, but she'd give me vague answers and change the subject. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. Amanda had gone to bed early, claiming she had a headache. Her phone was charging on the kitchen counter, and it kept buzzing with notifications. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen kept lighting up, and I couldn't help but see the name, Tyler, appearing over and over again. At midnight. Then 12:15. Then 12:30. I picked up the phone. I know I shouldn't have, but something in my gut told me I needed to see those messages. What I found changed everything. Messages that were definitely not about marketing strategies or business consulting. Messages that made it clear my wife was having an affair with her client Tyler, and had been for months. The messages were intimate, detailed, and left no room for interpretation. They talked about their last meeting, their next meeting, how they couldn't wait to be together again. There were photos I won't describe, but they confirmed what the messages already made clear. My wife of 8 years, the woman I trusted completely, was cheating on me with her client. I sat in that kitchen for hours, reading through months of messages. It wasn't just physical, they were talking about a future together, about how they were meant to be, about how Amanda was going to leave me once she figured out the right way to do it. They had pet names for each other. They talked about places they'd been together, places I thought she'd been for work. Every business trip, every late night, every emergency client call, it was all a lie. I didn't confront Amanda immediately. I know that probably sounds crazy, but I needed time to process what I discovered. I'm not an emotional guy by nature, comes with the territory of being an accountant, I guess. I like to have all the facts before I make decisions. So I spent the next few days acting normal while I figured out what to do. Amanda didn't suspect anything at first. She continued her routine, the secretive phone calls, the late nights, the distance. But I was watching everything now with new eyes. Every time she said she was working late, I knew she was with Tyler. Every time she claimed she was too tired to talk, I knew she'd been spending her emotional energy on someone else. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. We'd have dinner together, watch TV, go through the motions of being a married couple, and the whole time I felt like I was living with a stranger. She'd tell me about her day, editing out the parts that involved Tyler, creating this elaborate fiction of her life. I'd nod and ask questions, playing along with her charade while dying inside. After a week of this torture, I decided I had to confront her. I chose a Saturday morning when we were both home and had nowhere else to be. I made coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and told her we needed to talk. The look on her face told me she knew something was wrong, but she tried to play it off casual. "What's up, honey?" she said, sitting down across from me with her coffee cup. I pulled out printed copies of the text messages. I'd organized them chronologically, because that's how my brain works. I laid them out on the table between us like evidence in a court case. "I found these on your phone," I said simply. Amanda's face went white. She stared at the papers for a long moment, then looked up at me. I expected her to deny it, to try to explain it away, but she didn't. Instead, she just started crying. "Jake, I'm so sorry," she said through her tears. "I never meant for this to happen. It just happened." That phrase, "it just happened," made me angrier than anything else she could have said. Affairs don't just happen. They're a series of choices, a series of betrayals, a series of lies built up over time. But I kept my voice calm. "How long?" I asked. 6 months, she admitted. "Maybe 7. I don't know exactly when." "When what?" "When you decided to cheat on your husband." She flinched at the word cheat. I guess she preferred to think of it in more romantic terms. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she said. "Tyler was just a client at first. But we connected, you know. He understood me in a way that I don't." I finished for her. She didn't answer, but her silence was answer enough. We talked for hours. She told me about how it started, innocent flirtation during business meetings, then personal conversations, then emotional intimacy, then physical intimacy. She said she'd been unhappy in our marriage for a while but hadn't known how to tell me. She said Tyler made her feel alive again, made her feel like the person she used to be before we got married. I asked her if she loved him. She said yes. I asked her if she loved me. She said she didn't know anymore. By the end of the conversation, it was clear that our marriage was over. Amanda said she wanted to work things out, but in the same breath, she said she couldn't promise to stop seeing Tyler. She was torn between 2 lives, 2 men, 2 versions of herself. But I wasn't interested in being part of a love triangle. I told her I wanted a divorce. She cried harder and said she understood. We agreed that she would move out by the end of the month. We'd figure out the financial details later, once we both had lawyers. That night, Amanda packed a bag and went to stay with her sister. She said she needed time to think, to figure out what she really wanted. I knew she was really going to be with Tyler, but I didn't say anything. What was the point? After Amanda moved out, I threw myself into work. It was the only thing that made sense to me anymore. Numbers don't lie, don't cheat, don't break promises. I started staying late at the office, taking on extra clients, anything to keep my mind occupied. But even with all the distractions, I couldn't stop thinking about the affair, about how blind I'd been, about how stupid I felt. 2 weeks after Amanda left, she called me about business. She needed me to help her with some tax documents for her consulting company. Apparently, Tyler had advised her to get her books in order because he was thinking about investing in her business. The irony wasn't lost on me. my wife's lover was going to help her expand the business she'd built while cheating on me. I agreed to help her with the taxes. Not because I wanted to do her any favors, but because I'm a professional, and despite everything, I still wanted her business to succeed. Plus, I'd always been curious about her books. She'd been so secretive about them during our marriage, and now I finally had a reason to look. Amanda dropped off boxes of receipts, invoices, and financial records at my office. It was a mess, typical small business owner, no real system for organizing documents. She'd been doing her own bookkeeping, and it showed. I told her it would take me a few days to sort through everything and prepare the documents she needed. That night, I started going through her records. At first, I was just trying to organize everything chronologically and by category. But as I dug deeper, I started noticing irregularities. Small things at first, receipts that didn't match reported expenses, invoices that seemed inflated, business meals that were clearly personal expenses. The more I looked, the more problems I found. Amanda had been claiming personal expenses as business deductions. She'd been inflating the costs of office supplies, claiming personal travel as business trips, even deducting the cost of her gym membership as a health and wellness business expense. It was amateur hour, the kind of stuff that would definitely trigger an audit if anyone looked closely. But the real red flag was the cash payments. Amanda had been receiving significant payments in cash from several clients and hadn't been reporting them as income. I found bank deposits that didn't match her reported revenue, and when I cross-referenced them with her client invoices, there were thousands of dollars in unreported income. I stayed up until 3 a.m. that first night, going through her records. By the time I finished, I'd found over $50,000 in tax violations, unreported income, false deductions, and expenses that were clearly personal being claimed as business costs. It was serious stuff, the kind of thing that could result in significant penalties, interest, and even criminal charges. My first instinct was to call Amanda and tell her what I'd found. As her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, I felt obligated to protect her from herself. But then I remembered the text messages, the lies, the months of deception. I remembered how she'd chosen Tyler over me, how she'd been planning to leave me while letting me believe everything was fine. I printed out copies of all the problematic documents and organized them into a file. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the information, but I knew I needed to document everything. As a CPA, I had a professional obligation to report suspected tax fraud, but as her husband, I felt conflicted about turning her in. The next morning, Amanda called to check on my progress. She sounded happy, excited even. She told me about her plans with Tyler, how they were going to expand her business, maybe even get married once our divorce was finalized. She was building a new life with my replacement, using the business she'd grown while married to me. "How are the books looking?" she asked cheerfully. "Complicated," I said simply. "Well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're the expert." After we hung up, I stared at the file of evidence I'd compiled. Amanda trusted me to clean up her mess, to make her tax problems disappear so she could start fresh with Tyler. She had no idea what she'd actually handed me. I spent the next few days wrestling with what to do about Amanda's tax situation. On one hand, she was still my wife, at least legally, and I didn't want to see her go to prison or face serious legal consequences. On the other hand, she betrayed me in the worst possible way, and part of me wanted her to face some consequences for her actions. I consulted with my own lawyer, Brian Thompson. Yes, another Brian, the irony wasn't lost on me. I explained the situation in general terms, without mentioning names or specific details. He told me that as a CPA, I had certain professional obligations, but as her husband, the situation was more complicated. Spousal privilege might apply to some of the information, but not if I discovered evidence of ongoing fraud. "The question is," Brian Thompson said, "what do you want to happen here? Do you want to protect her, or do you want to protect yourself?" That question kept me up at night. What did I want? I wanted my wife back, but that wasn't an option. I wanted the affair to have never happened, but I couldn't change the past. I wanted to not feel like a fool, but that ship had sailed. What I really wanted was for Amanda to face some consequences for her choices, but I wasn't sure if destroying her financially was the right way to go about it. I decided to give her a chance to come clean on her own. I called her and asked her to meet me for coffee. We met at a neutral location, a Starbucks halfway between our old house and her sister's place. Amanda looked good, better than she had in months. Happy. Glowing, even. It was clear that her new relationship was agreeing with her. "I've been going through your business records," I started carefully. "There are some issues we need to discuss." Her face changed immediately. "What kind of issues?" "Tax issues. Significant ones. I found unreported income, questionable deductions, expenses that definitely shouldn't be claimed as business costs." Amanda looked confused. "But I've been so careful. I keep all my receipts, I track everything." "Keeping receipts isn't the same as following tax law," I explained. "You can't claim personal expenses as business deductions. You can't ignore cash payments when calculating your income. You can't inflate expenses to reduce your tax liability." "I didn't inflate anything," she protested. I just tried to maximize my deductions." "Isn't that what everyone does?" "Not to this extent. Amanda, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in violations. This is serious stuff." I watched her face as the reality sank in. She asked me to explain exactly what I'd found, so I went through it item by item. The personal meals claimed as business expenses. The gym membership. The inflated office supply costs. The unreported cash payments. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "I thought if it was even remotely business-related, I could deduct it." "And the cash payments?" She hesitated. "I didn't think small amounts mattered." "Amanda, you failed to report over $30,000 in cash payments. That's not small amounts." She started crying. Not the manipulative crying she'd done when I confronted her about the affair, but genuine panic. She realized she was in serious trouble. "What do I do?" she asked. "Can you fix this?" That was the moment of truth. I could have fixed it. I could have amended her tax returns, paid the penalties and interest, and made the problem go away. It would have cost her money, but it would have kept her out of serious legal trouble. As her husband and as a CPA, I had the knowledge and ability to protect her. But I thought about the text messages. I thought about the lies. I thought about Tyler and their plans for the future. I thought about how she'd been planning to leave me while letting me support her, help her, love her. "I can't," I said finally. "These aren't mistakes, Amanda. This is systematic tax fraud. As a CPA, I have professional obligations. I can't help you cover this up." "But you're my husband," she said desperately. "No," I replied. "I'm your soon-to-be ex-husband. And you made that choice when you decided to have an affair." Amanda begged me to reconsider. She offered to end things with Tyler, to come back home, to work on our marriage. But it was too late for that. The trust was broken, and even if she was willing to leave her lover, I wasn't sure I could ever believe her again. Plus, I suspected her sudden change of heart had more to do with her tax problems than any real desire to save our marriage. I told her she had two options: she could voluntarily come forward and amend her tax returns, paying the penalties and interest, or I would have to report what I'd found to the IRS. As a CPA, I couldn't knowingly participate in tax fraud, even if it meant protecting my wife. Amanda chose to try a third option. She hired her own accountant and told him I was lying about the tax violations because I was angry about our divorce. She painted me as a vindictive husband trying to destroy her business out of spite. She told people I was making up the tax problems to get revenge for her affair. Her new accountant, a guy named Carlos Rodriguez, called me within a week. He'd reviewed Amanda's records and found the same problems I had. He was professional about it, but he made it clear that Amanda was in serious trouble. He asked if I'd be willing to help them resolve the issues quietly, without involving the IRS. I agreed to meet with Carlos and Amanda to discuss the situation. We met at Carlos's office, and I brought copies of all the evidence I'd compiled. Amanda sat quietly while Carlos and I went through the documents. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that Amanda owed significant back taxes, penalties, and interest. "How much are we talking about?" Amanda asked. Carlos did some quick calculations. Roughly $85,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest. Maybe more, depending on how far back the IRS decides to audit. Amanda's face went white. "I don't have that kind of money." "You'll need to work out a payment plan," Carlos said. "The important thing is to get ahead of this before the IRS discovers it on their own." After the meeting, Amanda pulled me aside. She was crying again, but this time it was different. She wasn't trying to manipulate me or win me back. She was genuinely scared. "Jake, I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry about everything. The affair, the lying, the taxes. I made so many mistakes." "Yes, you did," I agreed. "I can't afford to pay $85,000. My business will be ruined." "Tyler." She stopped herself. "Tyler what?" "He said he'd help me expand the business, but if I owe this much in back taxes, he won't want to invest. He'll probably leave me." There it was. The real reason she was scared. Not because she'd broken the law, not because she'd destroyed our marriage, but because her new relationship might not survive her financial problems. "That's not my problem anymore, Amanda," I said. "You made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. I just want you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen." "But it did happen," I said. "All of it. The affair, the tax fraud, the lies. It all happened because you chose to do it." We finalized our divorce 2 weeks later. Amanda agreed to take responsibility for all her business debts, including the tax obligations. I kept the house and most of our savings, while she got her business and her debt. It seemed fair, considering everything. Carlos Rodriguez filed amended tax returns for Amanda and worked out a payment plan with the IRS. She avoided criminal charges, but the penalties and interest were substantial. Her business struggled under the financial burden, and she had to take on a second job to make ends meet. The divorce was finalized in March, about 6 months after I discovered the affair. Amanda moved in with Tyler, but their relationship was strained by her financial problems. Turns out, Tyler wasn't as understanding about tax debt as he'd been about helping her cheat on her husband. He decided not to invest in her business after all, claiming it was too risky. I heard through mutual friends that Amanda and Tyler broke up a few months later. Apparently, the stress of her tax problems and the guilt over how their relationship started was too much for their great love to survive. Amanda moved back in with her sister and focused on rebuilding her business and paying off her debt. I won't lie, there was a part of me that felt satisfied knowing that Amanda's affair had cost her so much. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad that our marriage had ended, sad that she'd made such poor choices, sad that it had all come to this. I threw myself into work and tried to rebuild my life. I started going to therapy, which helped me process the betrayal and the anger. I joined a gym, started cooking more, took up hiking. I was learning to be single again after 8 years of marriage. About a year after the divorce, I ran into Amanda at the grocery store. She looked tired, older than her years. We made awkward small talk for a few minutes. She told me she was still paying off her tax debt but that business was picking up. She asked how I was doing, and I told her I was good, which was mostly true. "Jake," she said as we were about to part ways, "I want you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. I know I hurt you, and I know I made terrible choices. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I regret it all. I looked at her for a long moment. She seemed sincere, but I'd learned not to trust her words. I hope you figure things out, Amanda, I said finally. I really do. And I meant it. Despite everything she'd done to me, I didn't want her to suffer forever. I wanted her to learn from her mistakes and build a better life. I just didn't want to be part of that life anymore. It's been 3 years since the divorce now, and I can honestly say I'm in a better place. I've learned to trust again, slowly and carefully. I started dating about 1.5 years after the divorce, and I'm currently in a relationship with a wonderful woman named Rachel. She's a teacher, divorced herself, and she understands what it's like to rebuild after betrayal. Rachel knows about Amanda and the circumstances of our divorce. I was honest with her from the beginning about what happened, and she appreciated my honesty. We take things slow, communicate openly, and don't keep secrets from each other. It's a refreshing change from the dysfunction of my marriage. My business has grown significantly since the divorce. I think throwing myself into work was good for me professionally, even if it wasn't the healthiest coping mechanism. I've hired 2 additional staff members and moved to a larger office. I specialize now in helping small business owners with their taxes and bookkeeping, and I'm very thorough about making sure everything is legitimate and above board. I still think about Amanda sometimes, especially when I'm working with clients who remind me of her, entrepreneurs who are passionate about their businesses but careless about their record keeping. I try to help them avoid the mistakes she made, both personal and professional. I heard through our mutual friends that Amanda eventually paid off her tax debt and got her business back on track. She's dating someone new, a guy named Kevin who owns a small construction company. I hope she's learned from her mistakes and is building a healthier relationship this time. Looking back, I think discovering Amanda's tax problems was both a blessing and a curse. It gave me leverage in the divorce and helped me understand just how reckless and dishonest she'd become. But it also forced me to make some difficult ethical decisions about how far I was willing to go to protect someone who had betrayed me. Some people might think I was vindictive for not helping Amanda fix her tax problems. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should have been the bigger person and helped her despite what she'd done to me. But I think there's something to be said for letting people face the consequences of their actions. Amanda made choices, to cheat, to lie, to commit tax fraud, and those choices had consequences. I'm not proud of how everything went down, but I'm not ashamed either. I did what I thought was right at the time, given the circumstances. I protected my own interests and my professional integrity, and I let Amanda deal with the mess she'd created. The whole experience taught me a lot about myself and about relationships. I learned that trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. I learned that people are capable of compartmentalizing their lives in ways that seem impossible from the outside. I learned that love isn't always enough to overcome fundamental differences in values and character. Most importantly, I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I survived the betrayal, the divorce, the financial complications, and the emotional aftermath. I rebuilt my life on my own terms, and I'm happier now than I was in the last few years of my marriage. If I could go back and change things, would I? I don't know. I wouldn't choose to go through the pain of discovering the affair, but I'm grateful that I found out the truth about who Amanda really was. I wouldn't choose to have my marriage end, but I'm glad I'm not still living a lie. Life has a way of working out, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened to you. That's how I feel about my divorce now. It was devastating at the time, but it led me to a better, more honest life. And sometimes, the skills that make you good at your job, attention to detail, analytical thinking, ethical standards, turn out to be exactly what you need to navigate personal crises. Being an accountant taught me to look at the numbers and see the truth, even when that truth was painful. It's a skill that served me well in my marriage, my divorce, and my life after. The numbers don't lie. People do, but numbers don't. And sometimes, that's the most important lesson of all.